Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered what really happens when you stop contacting a man? Not what he says, not what he pretends, but what he actually does when your energy, your effort, your attention suddenly go quiet. Because in that silence, his truth is revealed. And it's in those moments that you'll finally see whether he values you, fears losing you, or was only ever comfortable taking you for granted. When you stop contacting a man, it creates a space. And in that space, something powerful happens. You've taken your energy, your attention, your availability, and you've placed it back into your own hands. For most people, this feels uncomfortable at first because you've been conditioned to think that if you aren't reaching out, you're somehow losing him. But in reality, when you step back, you're finally giving him the chance to reveal his true feelings and intentions. And in that silence, men tend to do 4 very specific things. The first thing he will do is notice. Men are creatures of habit, and if he's grown accustomed to your good morning texts, your quick replies, your thoughtful check-ins, he's going to feel the absence of it like a missing rhythm in his day. That silence is loud. It forces him to reflect on what he's been receiving from you all along and how much of it he may have taken for granted. You see, when you consistently give, you make it easy for someone to fall into comfort. They don't have to think, they don't have to initiate, they don't even have to wonder. But when you stop, suddenly there's a gap. And in that gap, a man realizes how much of his connection to you relied on your effort. The second thing he will do is test himself against the silence. Some men, when they feel that space, will pull back further, either out of ego, pride, or confusion. Others will feel the urge to fill it. This is where you see whether he actually values the connection or whether he only enjoyed the convenience of it. If he reaches out, if he initiates, if he tries to rebuild that bridge, it's because the quiet made him uncomfortable. It triggered him to ask himself, why isn't she talking to me? Did I do something wrong? Do I want her attention back? That testing moment is powerful because it's no longer you chasing his energy, it's him choosing whether or not to chase yours. The third thing he will do is evaluate, and this is perhaps the most important part. When you stop contacting a man, you force him into clarity. Without your consistent validation, he has to ask himself whether he actually wants to pursue you. This is where men show their truth. If he really does want something meaningful, the silence will be the mirror that shows him what he stands to lose. It will move him to make a decision, to step up, to give the same energy you once gave freely. But if he doesn't truly want a deeper connection, then the silence will make that clear too. He won't fight for it. He won't fill the gap. And as much as that can sting, it's a gift because it gives you certainty. It saves you from investing months or years into someone who was never going to meet you halfway. And then there's the fourth thing. He will respect you differently. It may not happen immediately, but when you stop contacting a man, you demonstrate boundaries. You show him that your life doesn't revolve around him, that you have self-respect, patience, and standards. Men don't consciously think she stopped texting, therefore I respect her, but they do subconsciously register it. They realize that you are not someone who clings, you are not someone who begs, you are not someone who waits by the phone hoping for crumbs. That creates a different kind of attraction. It positions you as someone with value, someone he has to earn, someone he could lose if he doesn't take action. This is why silence is such a powerful tool. It's not a game, it's not manipulation, it's not about punishing him. It's about rebalancing the scales. When you stop contacting a man, you're putting the responsibility back where it belongs. If he wants to connect, he can. If he wants to know how you're doing, he can ask. If he wants to build something, he can show you through effort. It's no longer about proving your worth, it's about observing his. But here's the real beauty in this. During the silence, you discover yourself again. You're not just waiting for him to act. You're filling your own time, your own energy with things that matter to you. You're pouring that love you were so eager to give into your own life. That shift changes everything. Because when you stop contacting a man, you stop chasing the outcome and start living your truth. And that energy is magnetic. When you stop reaching out, you realize that the man who truly values you will never want to lose that connection. He'll feel the absence and he'll move toward you. He'll step up because he wants to, not because you begged him to. And if he doesn't, then you know you've saved yourself from wasting emotional energy on someone unwilling to meet you where you stand. That clarity is priceless. So don't be afraid of what happens when you stop contacting a man. It may feel uncertain at first, but uncertainty is often where transformation begins. He will notice, he will test, he will evaluate, and ultimately he will respect you in a way that only comes from you showing respect for yourself. In that silence, the truth always comes to the surface. And that silence doesn't just show you who he is, it shows you who you are. Because when you stop contacting a man, you learn something far deeper than how he reacts. You learn how strong you are when you no longer outsource your sense of worth to someone else's attention. You learn how capable you are of filling your own life with richness, even when you're not receiving the validation you once thought you needed. That moment, uncomfortable as it may feel, is a turning point. It's where you reclaim your power. You start to see that relationships aren't about constant pursuit on one side and passive receiving on the other. They're about balance. And by pulling back, by choosing silence, you create an opportunity for balance to exist. Think of it like a dance. If one partner keeps taking all the steps, dragging the other along, there's no harmony. But when you stop moving for a moment, you see whether the other person chooses to step forward. That's when you know if they're truly dancing with you or just letting you carry the rhythm. This is why space is so important. Space is not absence, it's clarity, it's not rejection, it's revelation. And the truth is, men often need that space to recognize the weight of what they're holding. People rarely appreciate something when it's constantly available. It's when it steps away, when it creates distance, that they wake up to what it means to them. And this isn't about playing games, it's about allowing reality to surface. Because reality is this: if he wants to be in your life, he will find a way. If he values you, he will take the initiative. If he sees your worth, he will not let silence stretch without trying to bridge it. Of course, in the meantime, the silence is not meant to be empty for you. It's an invitation to fill your world with things that matter, to reconnect with your passions, to invest in friendships, to pour energy into your goals. When you stop contacting a man, you create the freedom to contact yourself again. You start asking, what do I need? What excites me? What have I been neglecting while I was so busy trying to keep this connection alive? That self-rediscovery not only strengthens you, but also transforms the energy you radiate. And ironically, that energy often makes you even more magnetic. Because attraction isn't built on neediness, it's built on confidence, presence, joy, and independence. When you stop reaching out, you're not just withholding messages, you're embodying the truth that you don't need him to complete you. And nothing is more compelling than someone who is whole on their own. That's the kind of energy that makes a man look at you differently. He sees that you're not waiting, you're living. And that makes him ask himself, am I willing to risk missing out on someone like her? And here's another thing. Silence creates contrast. Without it, he only knows the version of you who is always available, always reaching out, always filling the void. But with it, he experiences what life feels like without your voice in his world. That contrast is powerful because it forces a choice. He either realizes that he misses you deeply and wants to step up, or he doesn't. And that in itself is a blessing, because now you know. Without contrast, there's only comfort, and comfort can disguise indifference for a very long time. Now let's address the fear that comes up in moments like this, the fear that silence will push him away. The truth is, silence doesn't push away the right person. The right person is drawn closer because of it. The wrong person fades away. And that distinction is exactly what you want. Because why hold on to someone who only stays when you're carrying the entire connection? Why give all of yourself to someone who wouldn't notice the difference if you stepped back? Silence reveals that answer, and though the answer might sting at first, it sets you free. When you stop contacting a man, you also break the cycle of chasing. Chasing is exhausting. It drains your energy, chips away at your self-esteem, and often leads to resentment. You start to feel like you're the only one trying. But when you step back, you replace chasing with observing. Instead of running after, you're watching. Instead of proving, you're evaluating. That shift changes everything, because suddenly you're no longer in a position of desperation. You're in a position of choice. You're not waiting to be chosen. You're choosing whether or not he deserves to remain in your world. And this is what true empowerment looks like. It's not about controlling him. It's about controlling yourself. It's about saying, I don't need to send another text to prove my value. My value exists whether he sees it or not. That belief radiates in everything you do. It shows up in the way you walk into a room, in the way you handle conversations, in the way you set boundaries. And men feel that. They may not articulate it, but they sense it. It's the difference between someone who is waiting for approval and someone who already owns their worth. Silence then becomes not just a tool for clarity in relationships, it becomes a declaration that you're not afraid to lose someone who isn't willing to meet you where you are, a declaration that you're strong enough to let go of what doesn't serve you, a declaration that your time and energy are precious and only those who truly value them will receive them. And when you live with that mindset, your entire experience of dating and relationships changes. You no longer cling, you no longer settle, you no longer accept half effort. The irony is, when you embody this energy, men often respond in ways they never did before. They step up, they pursue, they invest, because they see they're dealing with someone who won't carry the whole weight for them. They recognize they're either going to lose you or rise to meet you, and in many cases they choose to rise, not because you forced them, but because you allowed space for them to make that decision on their own. And a decision made freely is always more powerful than one made under pressure. But sometimes silence will reveal the opposite, that he won't step up, he won't invest, he won't care enough to reach out. And as painful as that realization may be, it's also liberating, because you no longer waste your time wondering. You no longer build castles in your mind about what could be. You have your answer. And with that answer, you can redirect your energy towards someone who truly deserves it, or toward yourself, which is always the first and most important relationship you'll ever have. So when you stop contacting a man, understand that what happens next is not just about him, it's about you. It's about watching his response, yes, but it's also about watching your own growth. It's about noticing how much stronger you become when you no longer depend on someone else's reply to feel valuable. It's about realizing that silence is not a void, it's a mirror. And in that mirror you see both his truth and your own. And in that mirror, you see both his truth and your own. You see the patterns you've lived with for years, maybe even decades, the tendency to overgive, to chase validation, to ignore your own needs just to keep someone else comfortable. You begin to recognize how often you've mistaken effort for love or attention for commitment. The silence strips away the noise, the constant exchanges, the temporary highs of a reply, and it leaves you with clarity. Clarity about what you actually want, and clarity about what you've been settling for. This is where the silence becomes less about him and more about your transformation. When you stop contacting a man, you begin to detox from the dependency on another person's behavior. Think of it like stepping away from a habit that no longer serves you. At first you feel the withdrawal, the itch to pick up the phone, the craving to send a message, the fear of being forgotten. But with every day that passes, the craving weakens. You start to realize that you don't need that hit of attention to feel alive. You can create your own sense of F-worth, your own sense of importance, without anyone else having to validate it. And as you build that muscle, something remarkable happens. You no longer tolerate crumbs. You stop negotiating with yourself about why a lack of effort is okay. You stop making excuses for someone who isn't showing up. The silence trains you to raise your standards, not because you're bitter, but because you're awake. Awake to the fact that love should not feel like a battle for scraps. Awake to the truth that a healthy connection thrives on mutual investment, not one-sided effort. What's more, you start to notice how silence draws out not only his truth, but the truth of those around you. Your friends might notice the shift in you, your energy, your boundaries, your focus. They might comment on how much lighter, calmer, or more grounded you seem. Because when you're no longer consumed by waiting for someone to show up, you create space for other things to flow in. Opportunities, friendships, hobbies, passions, all of these fill the vacuum left by chasing someone else's attention. And that in turn builds a life so rich that whether he comes back or not becomes less significant. Another thing that silence teaches you is patience. In a world where everything is instant messaging, instant gratification, instant answers, choosing not to reach out is an act of radical patience. It's choosing to let things unfold without your constant intervention. It's choosing to see whether someone else will rise to the occasion without you nudging them, reminding them, or carrying them. And patience is powerful because it means you've let go of the desperation for control. You've surrendered the need to manage someone else's feelings or actions, and instead you've grounded yourself in trust. Trust that what's meant for you will not pass you by. Trust that real love doesn't require constant forcey ang. Trust that you are enough, even in stillness. And make no mistake, men feel this patience. They sense when you're not chasing, when you're not desperately clinging, when you're not anxiously waiting for their every move. That absence of pressure creates a completely different dynamic. Suddenly, instead of being pursued, you become the one with presence, with power, with calm assurance. And that energy is irresistible. It's the kind of energy that makes him question his own behavior and step into action. But let's imagine he doesn't. Let's imagine he chooses the path of inaction, of indifference, of silence in return. What does that mean for you? It means you have the answer you were too afraid to face before. It means you no longer waste months or years of your life holding on to potential. It means you see with crystal clarity that the man you imagined in your head does not match the man standing in front of you. And that realization, though it may sting, is the very thing that frees you. It frees you to stop waiting. It frees you to stop investing in someone who never intended to invest in you. It frees you to turn toward the life that is waiting for you, full of people who would love nothing more than to meet you with the same energy you give. Silence, then, is not just a tactic, it's a filter. It filters out the ones who are only there out of convenience. It filters out the ones who were never willing to fight for you. And it highlights the ones who truly care, who notice your absence, who cannot sit comfortably in the quiet because they value your presence too much to let it slip away. And during this process, you begin to understand something profound. Your value is not in how much you give, but in who you are. Your worth is not measured by how often you reach out, how quickly you reply, or how tirelessly you show up. Your worth is measured by the simple fact that you exist, that you bring something unique to the table, that your energy and presence are gifts in and of themselves. The silence reinforces this truth because it shifts the focus from proving yourself to simply being yourself. You also learn that boundaries are not walls, they're doors. By stopping contact, you're not shutting someone out forever. You're opening a door for them to step through if they truly want to. And if they don't, that door remains closed, protecting you from those unwilling to honor your space. Boundaries don't push love away. They attract the right kind of love, the kind that recognizes and respects your value. And here's something else the silence does. It restores balance in your emotional life. When you're constantly reaching out, constantly giving, you put yourself in a position of emotional debt. You're always waiting for repayment that never seems to come. But when you stop, you clear that debt. You reset the scales. You reclaim your emotional energy and decide where to invest it moving forward. That balance is essential because without it, relationships become draining rather than nourishing. The silence also teaches you resilience. You learn that you can handle the discomfort of not knowing. You can handle the uncertainty of not hearing back. You can handle the fear of being forgotten. And once you prove to yourself that you can handle it, you become unstoppable. Because suddenly the thing you feared most, being ignored, being left behind, being unseen, loses its power over you. You've already faced it and you've already survived it. And when you emerge from that experience, you are no longer the same. You're stronger, calmer, more grounded. You've discovered that love is not about clinging, it's about choosing who deserves your time, choosing who gets your energy, choosing yourself first, always. And in that choice, you create a standard that will define every relationship you have from this point forward. So when you stop contacting a man, understand that it is never just about him. It is about the reflection it creates, the lessons it teaches, the strength it builds, and the freedom it offers. It is about reclaiming your role as the chooser, the one who decides, the one who knows her worth without needing constant proof. And once you've stepped into that space, you'll never look at silence the same way again. And once you've stepped into that space, you'll never look at silence the same way again. What once felt like emptiness now feels like strength. What once felt like rejection now feels like selection, your selection. Because silence is not about being ignored, it's about choosing to let your energy speak louder than your words. And in that silence, you discover that you don't need to chase, beg, or plead for someone's attention. You simply need to stand firmly in your own value and let the right people rise to meet you. This is the shift that changes the entire dynamic of how you relate to others. When you stop contacting a man, you shift from reactive to intentional. You're no longer reacting to his every move, his every text, his every inconsistency. Instead, you're intentional about where your energy flows. You're no longer on the roller coaster of highs and lows based on whether he showed up that day. You're on solid ground, observing calmly, deciding with clarity, and holding space for someone who's ready to give as much as they receive. And that energy doesn't just affect your relationships. It spills into every area of your life. You walk differently because you're no longer carrying the weight of uncertainty. You speak differently because your words are no longer laced with hidden anxiety about whether you're enough. You make decisions differently because you've learned to trust yourself instead of clinging to someone else's responses. Silence has taught you self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of every fulfilling connection you will ever have. Now think about how this silence also forces him to face himself. When you were always the one reaching out, he didn't have to question his own effort. He didn't have to ask whether he was truly invested. He didn't have to reflect on what role he played in the connection. But when you stop, the mirror turns toward him. He has to ask, do I care enough to step forward? Do I value her enough to make an effort? Am I willing to risk losing her? These questions reveal his truth, and while you cannot control the answers, you benefit from knowing them. And here's the paradox. Whether he comes forward or not, you win. If he steps forward, it's no longer out of convenience, it's because he chose to. He decided your absence mattered enough to break his own silence. That shows effort, it shows initiative, it shows desire. If he doesn't step forward, you win because you now know not to waste your energy on someone who was never willing to show up. Either way, you gain clarity. And clarity is priceless because it saves you from confusion, from wasted time, from years spent wondering. In that clarity, you learn another lesson. You are not for everyone. And that's okay. You are not supposed to bend, shrink, or chase to become right for someone. The right person doesn't need convincing. The right person doesn't need to be dragged. The right person recognizes your worth without you constantly proving it. Silence makes this crystal clear because it removes the constant noise of negotiation and lets truth surface. But perhaps the greatest gift silence gives you is perspective. When you stop contacting a man, you step back far enough to see the bigger picture. You begin to notice patterns in your past relationships, the times you overextended, the times you ignored red flags, the times you tried to hold something together that was never meant to last. You see how much of your energy has been spent keeping others comfortable while neglecting your own needs. And in that perspective, you finally say no more, no re-shrinking, no more chasing, no more pouring into cups that never pour back. This is the awakening moment. The moment where you realize that love should not feel like running after a train that never stops. Love should feel like walking side by side. And if someone isn't willing to meet you on that path, then your silence is not a loss. It's a filter, protecting you from what would have hurt you more in the long run. And while all of this unfolds, your silence becomes a magnet. Because people are drawn to those who do not need validation to feel valuable. They're drawn to the calmness of someone who knows their worth. They're drawn to the presence of someone who isn't desperate for attention, but is fully alive in their own skin. This magnetism isn't about playing hard to get. It's about truly being hard to lose. And that difference is everything. As the days and weeks pass, you start to feel how liberating it is not to be tied to someone else's actions. You wake up and realize you're not reaching for your phone, waiting for a message that may or may not come. You realize your mood is no longer dictated by a notification sound. You realize that your happiness belongs to you again, that independence is intoxicating because it reminds you of something you may have forgotten. You were always whole, even before him. And when you embrace that wholeness, you begin to raise your standards effortlessly. You stop saying yes to half-hearted connections. You stop tolerating people who only show up when it's convenient. You stop entertaining anyone who makes you question your value. Because now you've felt the strength of silence, and you know you'd rather be at peace in your own company than restless in someone else's inconsistency. Silence then becomes not just a response, it becomes a lifestyle where you no longer explain your worth, you demonstrate it by where you place your energy, a lifestyle where you no longer chase love, you attract it by being rooted in your sea. LF, a lifestyle where you no longer settle for potential, you demand presence. And as you live this way, you'll notice that the people who do enter your life are different. They meet you with respect. They recognize your boundaries. They don't play games because they sense you're not someone who tolerates them. They bring consistency because they know that's the only way to remain in your orbit. Silence has sharpened your discernment, and now you attract only what aligns with your truth. But let's not pretend this journey is always easy. There will be moments when the silence feels heavy. There will be nights when you wonder if you made a mistake, when you feel tempted to reach out, when you crave the comfort of familiarity. That's human. But those moments are where the real growth happens. Because every time you resist the urge to break the silence out of fear, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. Every time you choose patience over panic, you reinforce your self-respect. Every time you hold your ground, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than the pull of old habits. And eventually, you'll look back and realize the silence was never about him. It was about you. It was about you discovering your power. It was about you realizing that you don't need to chase what's already meant for you. It was about you understanding that your value is constant, unshakable, and undeniable, regardless of who recognizes it. That is the transformation silence offers. It starts as a pause in communication, but it evolves into a revolution in how you see yourself. It turns fear into strength, dependence into independence, uncertainty into clarity. And once you've experienced that transformation, you'll never again fear the silence. You'll honor it as the place where your truest self was born.